Can I repeat this one other way? You did your job, and other people did their jobs, and in comes the Obama administration, and they wipe out all the work that could have potentially saved the lives of Americans. Is that a fair statement?
Yes, it's a fair statement. My records were tagged, and I got an email from all 67 of them when they were deleted, and they came back to my inbox exactly the moment when they were entirely deleted from the system. But yes, I believe I have a plausible premise that we could have stopped it by two major ways. Either Syed Farook would have been put on the no-fly list and not allowed to travel, or his pending fiancée would have been denied a visa because of his affiliation with an organization with plausible ties to terrorism. That's at least two different ways.
As the investigation has progressed, we have learned and believe that both subjects were radicalized and have been for quite some time.
For the first time, a picture has emerged of the attackers together. The photo was snapped as the married couple passed through customs at Chicago's O'Hare Airport in July 2014. U.S. officials believe Farook's wife, Tashfeen Malik, had been radicalized before stepping foot in the U.S., raising alarm bells about the fiancé visa she came in on. The State Department says Malik would have had to have an in-person interview before receiving her visa, but a State Department document obtained by CNN in her immigration file shows she failed to show up for the interview. It's unclear if she ever rescheduled.
Harry, it just strikes me as bizarre what we're seeing. Is this
Anderson.
common? I mean, I guess at some point the police give up the crime scene and somebody else takes it over.
Anderson, I'm having chills down my spine what I'm seeing here. This apartment clearly is full of evidence. I don't see any fingerprint dust on the walls where they went in there and checked for fingerprints for other people that might have been connected with these two. You've got documents laying all over the place. You've got shredded documents that need to be taken out of there and put together to see what was shredded. You have passports, you got driver's licenses. Now you have thousands of fingerprints all over inside this crime scene. Now, there should have been some crime scene tape up there. Usually in an instance like this, if crime scene goes in and does the work and comes out, you still keep that scene locked up and with a sign on board saying you cannot come in until the police release it. The fact is maybe that they did not do that here. And I tell you, I am so shocked, I cannot believe it. This is Detective 101 for crying out loud. And now we have, it looks like dozens of people in there totally destroying a crime scene, which is still vital in this investigation because we don't know how many other people that they were connected with in this thing. So there might be tons of fingerprints in there that we need to look at to see if there's any kind of connection with those fingerprints or some people that might be on a watch list or something else. I'm really shocked here that the police, if the police are watching this right now, they better be on their way down there to be able to stop this from happening because this is, I'm shaking over it. That's how irresponsible this is for law enforcement by letting this happen.
But because of political correctness, you were not allowed to do your job, and they even convened a grand jury against you for supposedly, violating the rights of the terrorist?
Yeah, the reasons that they investigated me and began to take the information out of the system, I was investigated 9 times, 8 of them by the Obama administration for the violation of the civil rights and civil liberties of foreign nationals and violation of their privacy rights. You might recall that after the San Bernardino shooting, DHS said publicly that the reason that they didn't examine Tashfeen Malik, the wife of Syed Farook, her social media was because they were concerned about violating her civil rights and civil liberties. So yes, they shifted from a law enforcement approach to counterterrorism to a focus on civil rights and civil liberties, which would be okay, except that it was emphasized for foreign nationals. And that's why I got in so much trouble. Last week, Congress submitted letters to the Attorney General Sessions charging or showing statutes of Comey and McCabe and Strzok and Page and Clinton, Hillary Clinton, using the same statutes, 18 U.S.C. 1030 statutes that they tried to put me in jail for.
What are we going to do with the law enforcement information that's in the system? We call it derogatory information if we're trying to bring the leaders of these groups into a relationship with the government. You have two choices. Act on it from a law enforcement perspective and carry forward, or ignore it. But even ignoring it is simply a passive response. They didn't stop there. They became deliberate and intentional. And in 2009, what I call the first great purge, they ordered me to remove the linking information from all 850 records that I'd put into the system. Right exactly at the time when I was watching the C-SPAN hearings with the committees in Congress and expressing their concerns about the underwear bomber. And their two concerns were that failure to connect the dots and the radicalization of U.S. citizens and/or lawful permanent residents. Exactly what we saw in Orlando and in San Bernardino and in Chattanooga and in Fort Hood and in Boston. The very same thing that the Congress expressed so clearly they were concerned about is exactly what happened. That was the first great purge in 2009. They ordered me to modify, that was the word, it's a euphemism. And how many people here have been pulled over by a state trooper? He walks up to you and he says, I'm going to give you a ticket. But I'm not going to tell you why. I just pulled you over and I'm going to give you a ticket. You got to pay the fine. It's $100. But I'm not going to tell you why. That's not acceptable, is it? Well, in my case, when I put those records into the system, but there was no explanatory reason for why those records were in the system, my colleagues have no reason or no understanding of why I put the records in there in the first place. So they're going blind. Comes 2/11, what we call the second great purge. This is when you start to hear in the news people like Stephen Coughlin and Matthew Dooley and John Guandolo and Bill Gothrop, one or two special subject matter experts from each one of the major federal government law enforcement oriented agencies. They came after us first. They started from a top-down approach. They knocked off all the subject matter experts in each one of the agencies, and then they went forward with the next steps of their program. Own document on training. It's available online. There's 3 sections to it. It's a 3-page document, 1, 2, 3 paragraphs. Paragraph 1, and I'll slightly paraphrase, says, even though an individual is affiliated with a known terrorist organization, you cannot assume that that individual is a terrorist himself. Then we come to things when they begin to really intensify. And that is in the year 2012 when I was working at the National Targeting Center, not far from here in Reston, on a case called the Tablighi Jamaat Initiative. Tablighi Jamaat is a group, a Salafi Sunni organization with between 75 and 125 million members worldwide. They came here to the United States in groups of 3, 4, and 5, and they were abusing the visa waiver system. That's how we first noticed them. And this also is when the State Department, you okay on time? Okay, should I go faster? No. You good? State Department came to the National Targeting Center, a group of 7 and 3 SESs, and had a meeting upstairs and said they had concerns about our focus on Tablighi Jamaat because it was not a designated terrorist organization. Therefore, in plain language, they said, you're violating their civil rights and civil liberties. Now, remember I told you I took shorthand? Well, I was the proverbial fly or ant on the wall. I wrote down everything they said. I never said a word the entire meeting, but I wrote down everything that they said. It wasn't recorded, except I recorded it. So I heard it firsthand, and then it was verified later on when Judicial Watch, thank God for them, FOIA'd my own case. Because I was eventually investigated by 3 different branches of the federal government all at the same time. And one of them was the Inspector General, Department of Homeland Security. When I asked for the results of my own case, they told me point blank, you can't have it. You have to FOIA it. So Judicial Watch stepped up and they FOIA'd it for me. And we found, snuggled in some of the caches of documents, the emails going back and forth that told exactly why they shut down the Tablighi Jamaat case. They were going to take it in another direction, another euphemism, because of concerns over civil rights and civil liberties.
66-year-old Philip Haney, a former DHS officer, was known in D.C. circles as a person who never held back his opinions, even about his boss, President Barack Obama.
I was told to remove all unauthorized references to terrorism.
Testifying to Congress as a whistleblower about Obama, claiming that the then president was not taking the threat of terrorism seriously.
I would like to show you now the logo of the Muslim Brotherhood, the moderate organization that this administration chose to ally itself with.
In 2016, Haney even wrote a book, See Something, Say Nothing. Previous reports did indicate Haney's death was a suicide, but deputies haven't made that determination as of yet. His body was found in a car in this park and ride that's along Highway 16. It's less than 3 miles from where he lived in an RV park. Investigators are not saying if foul play was involved. Deputies say it is a standard to analyze these type of incidents before any ruling can be made.
Do my utmost to what's the word?
Will you get back into government?
Well, I would be willing to be re-deputized, for sure. And I've said so publicly quite a few times. Essentially to Mr. Trump, that if you want to drain the swamp, I can help you because I know where some of the valves are. Yeah, so yeah, I would be willing to do it.
But is there still an element within that's essentially sabotaging or working against the White House interests?
Well, I call them gravitational forces that kind of trying to pull the ship off a course.